Hello everybody, welcome back to another One Piece review. It's time to be covering manga chapter 1163. Oda is really cooking and stepping on the accelerator with the pacing of Garp Valley, and it makes me wonder, considering the reveal we got at New York Comic Con this year with the anime visuals of the Straw Hats in their Elbaf gear that was revealed at New York Comic Con. And obviously this means Elbaf is coming at 2026, but it may be coming a lot sooner than we anticipated, so I don't know if this has a direct effect on the pacing as of late, but I definitely noticed there's a difference from how this flashback started to Oda just like, okay, we gotta get to the next major plot point in this Garp Valley flashback. And also I think it's kind of poetic considering we may not be seeing the Straw Hats again until 2026 in Elbaf in the manga anyhow. So speaking of colour schemes, we actually got the cover page for volume 113, which reveals the colour scheme for all the Holy Knights present in Elbaf. So let's dive into this chapter. Obviously we've got a cover page, but with the Yamato cover story ending, we're Oda's back to the cover requests, and we got Luffy doing a bit of parkour with a bunch of Japanese macaques, better known as Japanese monkeys. So moving on, that's pretty much straightforward. This chapter in the large is pretty much straightforward as well, considering we have Saint Saturn with Imu taking over his body, but a la what we got with Gunko in the present. Obviously we have to have something similar in the past, in more ways than one, especially with this chapter. So Saturn emerges via Imu and immediately, taking no prisoners, attacks Marines and pirates, some of which belong to Roger's crew, because we couldn't find out that Roger's like, damn it, my crew's been affected by this. Scopper, take care of them. And Scopper's like, yo, you're doing this again, but you better be careful, just don't do anything crazy. So, but we know what this is leading to. This is a way to get Garp and Roger to the same destination, to like team up. And as far as Xebec, that's not needed because he's already on the scene with Imu/Saturn. Xebec is standing his ground. So, hey, you came here to kill me in person. And Imu responds typically, so thou art the Davy Jones. And Xebec responds, no, afraid not, never met the guy. Which is funny because you would think Imu would already know this, but considering he's from the Davy clan, Imu's taking no chances here. So, speaking of meeting members from the Davy clan, apparently in the previous chapter it was confirmed that the two villagers that got taken over by apparently St. Garling's abilities, we don't really know who's responsible for that, but considering it's similar to what we saw with Dottie and Bragi and the giants from Elbaf, it could very well be Gunko who's behind this, but we saw apparently Xebec's father and Xebec's grandmother taken over by the same thing we're going to see Xebec taken over, spoiler alert, but it's the same thing that happens. So not to say I don't care, but it's like it was kind of super nonchalant and super casual by Oda, because it was just a quick panel of the villagers and Xebec saying Papa and Grandma, and it's like, yeah, we, in comparison to what we got with Eris, who Oda's done a great job of highlighting in the short time he's presented Eris to us, the father and the grandmother of Xebec, because considering it was just super casual and super out there, like, okay, Xebec's father and his grandmother being taken over by this ability that Gunka's using in the present. But whatever, it's just something that I thought I'd mention. Xebec responds, I believe promises are meant to be kept. Now, when he said that, I thought about the first scene we saw Xebec, where he's in the flower room with Gunko and Imu, which I think is kind of ironic, considering we haven't seen Gunko yet. I'll get to that by the end as well. That's precisely why you must be expunged, aka erased, from the annals of history. Imu's world remains incomplete unless this happens. Xebec responds, the world ain't yours, as he just slashes the legs of Saint Saturn. Remember, he was taking over Saturn's body, so it's the pincers of the legs that's getting sliced off by Xebec. Doesn't last long, we know, but then this is kind of funny, because immediately you got Marines from Garp's group like questioning Roxy's going after him. He's after Saint Saturn. But then they kind of question Vice Admiral Garp, what should we do? Should we provide backup? Now, in this scene, it's kind of like taken out of context because it's fired back up to Saturn, or in this case, the way that Garp perceives this and the way he responds is, damn right we should. And Garp has his face like he doesn't care. He's going to back up Xebec here, but the perception you get is the Marines, that's not what they meant. But Garp is like, nah. He's like, he has no love for Reversi. Clearly, he has no love for the Celestial Dragon, so he doesn't care if it's Seymour or not. So, in his own way, he's going to back up Xebec, which is going to lead into Roger coming in as well. Because we see pirates like trying to make a move, that all of a sudden, Captain John from the Rocks Pirates is about to use his abilities, like, but before he does, he's like pretty much revealing like he's going to go off on his own and steal the treasure for himself, all the loot for himself. Because then he goes up, proceeds to go to say, "This is goodbye, Rocks Pirates." So he's out for himself, which we should have seen coming because most of the Rocks Pirates are out for themselves, except for Newgate. Because immediately following Captain John about to like skedaddle with the loot for himself, he uses his abilities, like the magnet Domi, I guess, because he's using his abilities to use magnetism to pull all the metallic objects to himself, including, as we see Dragon running with Baby Shanks, Dragon being pulled to Captain John's direction because of the gun on his back. So that was kind of neat. So we see all the metallic objects being pulled to his direction, including the axe of Scupper, because Scupper notices this. Our metal is reacting to something, obviously Captain John. And that goes to obviously the main purpose of this is to steal the treasure and the treasure chest. That's going to prove important a little bit later. But he's stealing the loot for himself. Immediately, though, following this, Gonzui from the Rocks Pirates sees this. He knows what's going on and immediately uses Sky Snake Red Cannon on Captain John. And that's literally pretty much his demise. So if you wanted to know how Captain John met his end, there you go. That little sprinkle of odors added into that God Valley cake. Immediately following this, and because Captain John's been taken out, and I thought this was absolutely brilliant by Oda because the way he set this up. The reason he did this was because of the treasure chests. And once Captain John got taken out because of his abilities wearing off, the treasure chests end up in the same location as Dragon, and more specifically Little Shanks, which comes into play a little bit later on. But I thought it was kind of brilliant on Oda's behalf. Dragon's trying to leave, so how do you get there? Boom, there you go. But then Shiki comes in, questioning Gonzui, why the hell did you attack Captain John? And Gonzui's response is, he was going to take that treasure for himself, considering the treasure chests alone were worth $1 billion. So yeah, they're out for themselves. And Shiki has this look of it. He gives this response like mad sus expression, like he's going to steal the treasure for himself. That's the vibe I get, because it cuts away. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Rocks fight amongst themselves here. It looks like that's where this is going, because we saw Gonzui take out Captain John. Who's to say Shiki's not going to take out Gonzui and steal the treasure for himself? Or maybe Shiki does have some loyalty. I don't know. But we know he gets captured, at the very least. Speaking of being captured, we see Garp marching for Ibu's location, who's trying to be restrained by the group of Marines who's saying, you can't do this. He's one of the world's overseers because it's still Saint San, a member of the Gorosei. But Garp doesn't care. He's like, he's still just the pest to me. Meanwhile, speaking of bickering back and forth between the Rocks Pirates, we got Kaido and Big Mom. Kaido is like, yo, say something for me, because now he's got a devil fruit. I guess he wants to show off. But in comes Big Mom, Charlotte Linlin, because she's like, yo, you stole that devil fruit from me, I'm going to kill you. But instead, they unleashed their attacks, and this was epic as hell, I'm not going to lie. When you have 4 members of the Rocks Pirates, added to Garp and Roger, all charging up their signature techniques to like unleash on Imu. That because for instance, you have Garp using Galaxy Impact, you got Roger using Divine Departure, you got Big Mom uses Ukoko Sovereignty, you got Kaido using Blast Breath for the first time ever, and then you got Newgate using, I think this is a new technique because it says Shattering Void. I don't think I've ever seen Whitebeard use this, so that's kind of cool. Then Xebec finally unleashes his attack with his sword, and I love the name, Pandemonium of the Abyss. Fits perfectly with Xebec, considering what we've seen so far. they all unleash their attacks, and granted, it does hit Ibu, but I mean, the damage doesn't last long. But you see that it causes a huge surge of Conqueror's Haki. It's insane. Fighter Marines are getting knocked out. Now, I do find it interesting during this scene, we see Dragon unaffected, still awake, but he's lost Shanks, and Shanks is approaching the treasure chest because he sees the treasure. So, and by the way, Shanks is also awake despite this clash. So it kind of reminds me with like Shakuyaku. I don't know if that was a gag or if Oda was being legit, because we saw Glorisoa being affected by the clash through Roger and Garp for the first time. That knocked out Glorisoa. Shaki was able to kind of withstand that and actually try and bring Glorisoa to snap her out of it. So I don't know if was that a gag, or is that Oda telling us something about the strength of Shakuyaku without actually having a devil fruit? I don't know, but that was kind of interesting. Oda highlighted that. But we know why this scene is here, is to get the treasure chest to the location, like I said. So that's one plot point taken care of. Now, this is another plot point that Oda is like zeroing in on. And I love how, while Xebec is looking on at the damage caused by this combination attack, I guess by the six of them unleashing their attacks, Xebec's looking on, but meanwhile you got Garp and Roger trying to take credit for this. Meanwhile you got Kaido and Big Mom still bickering, because Kaido's like, it's too late to throw it back up and pause, but he's on about the devil fruit. Then Lilin's like, you better pay me back. And if I'm Kaido, and I said this in my last review, Kaido should respond and go to hell, because you were trying to steal that for yourself. So we don't know if Big Mom really intended to give Kaido a devil fruit or not, especially not that one. But so Lilin's trying to use that to bargain with Kaido. Meanwhile, like I said, Xebec's looking on, and you got Ibu running the dialogue, the faraway in the forest running, and of course he's referring to Teach and obviously Eris, because Xebec immediately takes notice and he starts to panic here, and Ibu responds, a new branch of the Davy clan, the woman and her child trying to survive, dangerous lives must not be set loose. So immediately this sets Xebec off, because he goes in, and this is a critical error on his part, because it comes back to backfire. So he goes in, he slashes Ibu, it lands, but it doesn't do it doesn't do damage for long, because not only does Ibu slash Saturn regenerate, he also uses this to stab Xebec. Because we see this back at the Reverie involving Sabo and Cobra, so he does the same thing, only this time Xebec made a huge mistake here, because Ibu responds, it will not be Mu who acts, thou should be the one to exterminate them, go forth and slay your wife and child. And at this point you kind of know where this is going. Reversi Domi, much similar to the technique that Gunko used / Ibu used in the present in Elbaf, to completely take control of Xebec, and he begins to transform with the panel of Eris trying to run away with Teach. And that's how the chapter ends. So, is this shocking at all? No, it's not. Because I said this years before we got to Elbaf, like before we even knew the abilities of Imu, what Gunko was doing in Elbaf. Like I said, Imu had to have a role as to why we got to point A to point B. For example, like it started off with Garp. It started off with Roger against Garling. Apparently, that changed and it went to Garp versus Roger. So how do we get there to Garp and Roger teaming up against Xebec? Here's your answer, even though the answer may have been obvious from the get-go. I guess now we're going to learn more than ever about Xebec's character, because again, we see him transforming. By the way, his form is going to look beast, considering his design already is completely badass. So you can imagine what looking like a demon is going to do to him. And we see Kaido, Lin, and Newgate all in the area as well. One thing that comes to mind immediately is, why isn't Imu having Gunko? Or we don't know if Gunko's actually targeting them right now. We haven't seen Gunko in a few chapters. That could be the case, and Gunko could be the one to target Eris and Teach. So with this in mind, things have turned upside down. It's got completely dark now, because Imu is literally doing the same thing in the past that he did that Ima's doing in the present, which controlling Doi and Brogi. The command was to take out Jarl, which we don't know how that's going in the present, but we know that's the command he was given. They were given to like take him out, because I personally feel he knows the truth about Loki and King Harold, which we still need to get, by the way. I'll get back to that in a second, by the way, because that ties into something else I was thinking about. But also now Xebec has been given the command to slay his wife and kill his own child. Remember what Eris said. If it comes to it, she'll end her own life and kill Teach. If it comes to that, but we know Teach survives. And I said Oda had Eris directly say, "Let's meet again on Lelucia Kingdom." Now we know Lelucia Kingdom is no more, but the fact that why would Oda have Eris say that if there's nothing's going to come of it? So, or is that just a red herring and Eris is literally going to die here and Teach is going to be the one to survive? Only two options come to mind here, and I'm only going to throw this out there because it has to tie in with King Harold's story. If this whole incident goes in without King Harold having some type of involvement during this incident, then I don't know. Oda's, like I said, Oda's taking liberties, but I can see this being the case. I can see King Harold doing something to actually help Teach escape, just as a last favour to Xebec. Because remember, before this, Xebec was like trying to ask King Harold for his help, like, help me out here. So we don't really know what happened during that clash, because there's a lot of context missing on that. So we don't know if King Harold's going to have a role. That's one possibility. Another possibility is Xebec, before that transformation completely takes him over, he goes on to say to Newgate and the rest of his crew that's there, "Go and make sure my family escapes." And maybe that's how Newgate meets Teach for the first time. I don't know. But we know that's not going to be the case. So there may be a curveball thrown, or this could be just a red herring and Eris is going to be killed. The question is, by who? Because we know this is going to lead into the team up with Garp and Roger versus Xebec. Is that going to be enough to take Xebec out? So now we got the context for how we got from point A to point B with all these parties involved. We know who's going to survive. And I would say out of the Rocks Pirates, the most Rocks Pirates, I would say Newgate is probably the most loyal. Maybe Linlin and Kaida to some extent. I don't know about that. We'll see how that goes. But Whitebeard for sure is definitely the most loyal of the Rocks Pirates. I guess we can't say the same for Captain John. I guess greed got the better of him and he paid for it. But like I said, Xebec made a critical error by attacking Emu, because now the cards are pretty much in Emu's hand right now. And I personally feel that maybe Gunko will have something to do with it as well. I don't know. We haven't seen Gunko for a while, and I personally feel that's done by design. Now, my final point to this, and this goes back to what I said about King Harold here, and with this situation involving Xebec, maybe there's something similar that happens involving Loki and King Harold's situation. Because remember, when we first got introduced to this flashback, King Harold was in complete silhouette mode when he was shish kebabbed, quote unquote, and that's where we left off, and it went further into King Harold's backstory. And my question was, he's silhouetted, but why? We know his design, so maybe this is the reason. Without actually Oda telling us, and maybe Oda's going to dive back into this quicker than we expected, because let's be real here, outside of the status of Ida, what else is there to draw out here? We need the context as to what happened involving Loki and King Harold. Maybe this is it, without Oda actually telling us directly. Xebec already looking like a beast. You can only imagine what he's going to look like, looking like a demon. So that's going to be hell on earth for Garp and Roger, no matter how strong they are in their prime. Those are my thoughts. That'll be yours in the comments below. It's a straightforward to the point chapter from Oda, and I wonder, like I said at the beginning, I wonder if the reveal at New York Comic Con has something to do with it. Like maybe we're getting to Elbaf closer than we thought. I don't think it's going to be at the start of 2026. That would be absolutely ridiculous, considering how long they took last year to like let the manga pull ahead. I don't think they're going to do that here. So that's going to do it for you guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this review, you guys know what to do. Hit that thumbs up. I appreciate all you guys' support when it comes to these One Piece reviews. Take it easy, guys. Thanks, guys. Bye.